Hello, welcome, how are you? Right, this is a video on the attachment wound. You can call it a video on attachment, but it's part of the folder Twin Flame Soulmate Diary. Okay, it's the first video that I'm doing under that name, but I'm keeping all the previous videos I did, which were like Soulmate, Twin Flame Support and Recovery. That's what I used to call it, but I'm just going to call it the diary now because you know that I've been on Soulmate, Twin Flame journey the last few years. And oh, you can see Gilbert. Welcome, Gilbert. He's my little soulmate. Yeah, so you know that I've been on that journey like you have. And so it is like I want it to be more like a diary, basically, so that it's because I always do share little bits and bobs about what I'm going through. And it's because basically how I see it is that you're my soul family, soul fam-a-lamb. My kids kill me when I talk like that. But yeah, you're my soul fam. And so because you're my soul family, let's do it like a diary. And it's, you know, like I'm no further forward than you are necessarily, and I'm going through a lot of the same you know, learnings and healings and stuff all of the time, just like you are. I'm making a lot of mistakes the same. You know, I progress with my awakening and then I sort of regress for a while. And that's all part of the Twin Flame Soulmate journey, you know. Whether you call it your soulmate or your twin flame, sometimes, to be honest, the labels are a bit pointless, but it just indicates that you've probably got an attachment issue. Okay. You might not want to hear that. I didn't want to hear it for quite some time. It's a hard thing to come to terms with because society conditions us to think that we need to be in relationships, you know, and so we're conditioned with that right from the get-go, that we should be in a relationship and that being alone is lonely, you know, because lonely alone, it's got a negative connotation to it, which is ironic because being alone is non-duality, and non-duality is Ada Vedanta. It's the one self, source, spirit. When you're alone, you're actually closer to God, to spirit, source. So it's actually the most sacred way of being, you know, but obviously society didn't teach that, does it? Matrix doesn't encourage it because Matrix wants us in samsara, suffering. Anyway, I sort of digress. That this video is really about the attachment wounds, and I just want to talk about it because the attachment wound is really one of the main sort of roots of the problem, you know. If you feel you are always wanting a relationship, if you feel like you obsess over a particular person, or if you you're going through grief because you've lost somebody, yeah, or you're in that process. So they're the reasons why this video would be helpful, because when the attachment wound comes up, it's horrendous, absolutely horrendous. Basically, like, my attachment wounds came up for me when me and my husband separated, you know, and he's a really good guy. We had a good marriage. So that's the way it was, you know, it just came to a natural conclusion. And that's when all my attachment wounds came to the surface, and I didn't really understand what was going on. Some of you may have experienced this or other forms of differences in relationships happening, and then you feel that attachment wounds come up. So what is the attachment wound? The attachment wound is like a whole freaking pain. It's like the biggest pain of your life. And what it is basically we're not fully self-realized. Yeah, we don't really we're not enlightened. We don't really embody what we are, which is consciousness, spirit. We keep we're still unconscious, yeah? So we basically still perceive ourselves to be an identity, an ego identity. We have moments of clarity where we know we are the self, we know we are this beautiful spirit, this beautiful being. We know we're just in here and now, consciously channeling spirit and love into Gaia, you know, because we are awakened on this channel, you know, we're not completely unconscious. But those moments are very fleeting, and they can call that samadhi, where you have those lovely fleeting moments and they're just beautiful. It can be when you're meditating, or when you're just on your own, just in nature, or just, I used to just get it just around my home, you know, like I moved here 3 years ago and I was having a terrible time. You know, it was like my mental breakdown, midlife crisis thing. And I had all this pain body surging up because my attachment wound was completely raw, you know, because I didn't have my husband anymore, and it was just like my attachment wound was horrendous. And so, but then I would have little moments of samadhi, little moments of like, oh, I am spirit, I can feel the love of me, the love of spirit within me, and it was just amazing feeling. So we do have the feeling of it, but not consistently. You only get it consistently, obviously, once you've completely eradicated the ego and you're fully self-realised, fully enlightened, yeah? But there's not many people that achieve that in one lifetime. But it's not to say that you can't. I'm a believer, we can achieve it in one lifetime. I don't know if that's my super ego saying that or what, but I just do believe it. But anyway, the thing is, right, the attachment wounds comes up when you rip away the attachment that you've had, either by the loss of somebody because they've died, because they've passed to spirit, yeah? They haven't really died, I just want to say that. They haven't really died because there's no birth, there's no death. Ramana Maharishi, okay? We are eternal beings. So it's the physical illusion of death. And they've passed back to spirit, so that exposes your attachment wound. Or you, like I said, you and your partner split up, or something else like that. Now, this attachment wound comes out, and the reason the attachment wound is there is because we, as ego, because we are not fully self-realised as a spiritual being, because really there's no attachment wound whatsoever. You know, we are spirit, we are always completely connected to source consciousness, and it's always, that love of source consciousness is always flowing through, it's always available, and it's what we are. We actually are consciousness, okay? Now, we are that, but the ego, the physical reality, obstructs us from that knowingness, and we keep slipping into this ego identity all of the time. So we have the fleeting moments when we come back to self and we feel ourselves and realise ourselves as source, and then those moments kind of quickly seem to pass and we slip back into the ego identity, the physical reality. Now, the physical reality, the matrix, and the ego identity that we wrongly perceive ourselves to be are basically one and the same thing. And that's why they always say that your physical reality reflects the energy that you are, because without the ego identity, there is no physical reality. Now, that's a whole nother ball game, and I'll do a video on that another time. So, but let's just say, for example, now that we are slipped into ego identity. When we are ego identity, because we perceive ourselves to be a physical body, we are in separation from the spirit that we really are, that's there all of the time. Okay, so you already are fully self-realised, you already are consciousness. That is ever present and available, and you don't have to pay any money to achieve it or have any qualifications. Yeah. But what's happening is we're wrongly identified with the body and the mind, and we slip into the ego identity all of the time, and that gives rise to this physical reality that we're mentally projecting into. So when you're in separation from consciousness, from your source, which is, let's face it, majority of the freaking time, now to function as that ego identity, because you don't feel the constant flow and love of spirit, yeah, you don't feel the oneness, you don't feel that stability. What you feel yourself to be is a very fragile, vulnerable entity or identity, and it feels unsafe, yeah. It gives rise to lots of ego fears, because that's, you know, also lots of desires. And that's how we're really mainly living and operating, as this egoic self identity, the body, the mind. And it's total separation from source. So now, in that ego identity that you are perceiving yourself to be, which you aren't really, but that's how we perceive ourselves, that's a painful way to live. Okay, why do we do it? Freaking hell, I don't want to go into that either. Another video. But it's such a painful way to exist, because you're obstructing and denying the true love that you already are. You cannot even see it. Now, it's a painful way to exist, and the way you exist as that egoic identity is to wrongly sort of perceive that you're going to get happiness from objects and forms outside of yourself in the physical reality. So as such, you start to form attachments with people and objects because you think they're going to give you happiness. Now, once the ego perceives a person as a form of happiness or something that will give it happiness, the ego is very crafty and it's very powerful, and it will really start to put its hooks into that person, okay? And that is what they call creating a relationship. Sorry, people, but that's what it is. And when you create that attachment into another person, if they want to create an attachment back to you because their ego perceives you as a giver of happiness and whatever, and they also feel that an attachment will also give them happiness, then you can call that a relationship, because they're attaching into you, you're attaching into them, yeah? And that's how the relationship gets formed, right? So that can work okay for a period of time, but inevitably most relationships go through rocky patches because two people's egos attaching into each other, can you imagine? Yeah, the amount of shadows that are going to come up, the amount of insecurities, yeah? Because that's what you're dealing with. You're having a relationship with somebody, an attachment here between the ego and the ego, right? It's not coming from source. This is what the ego's doing because it needs an attachment to feel safe and secure and get its needs met, you see? So that's why relationships go through these rocky patches, and a lot of them end up just splitting up, right? Because how can the ego ever be fully satisfied? The ego is an entity that never feels fully satisfied. It always wants more, more, more. And it also has a lot of fears and insecurities, and then you project them onto each other, right? So that's why relationships are so temporary and fragile. Now, some relationships do last the course to the end of time, you know, and then both partners go back to spirit. Maybe at different times, and I can do another video on that. But an attachment, right, a twin flame type of thing, or sometimes even what you think is a soulmate to begin with, and then the soulmate relationship starts to go bloody wrong. It's when your ego has decided that somebody's going to give you happiness. That person might initially agree, but then they sort of change their mind, and their ego thinks, actually, no, this is not what I want. I don't want this attachment. It's not going to give me happiness. Their ego decides to pull away, and your ego, goes through the biggest chronic pain. Or, well, actually, this is kind of the same video then. Or they, sadly, very traumatically, your person passes back to spirit because that's their predestined time to do so in this incarnation, okay? So, there are other ways people leave through that their ego identity may break down because of illness, accidents, brain damage, dementia, things like that. The egoic personality can be stripped away, and that person's already on their journey back to consciousness, okay? That is definitely another video. So there's different reasons why attachments break, but let's just say that one of the two people, the attachment comes away, and then this is you, your ego. What the hell does it do now? Yeah, what does it grasp onto now? It's gonna madly try to get that person back. Now, in a twin flame situation, that's exactly what happens, and it's hell. And what happens is the person, because I'll have to do another one on when somebody passes back to spirit, or they have illnesses and their ego identity pulls away, breaks down. but this is particularly for twin flame situations. You're basically playing a cat and mouse game, because your ego really, really wants that twin flame, but your twin flame ego's changed its mind. And then sometimes it changes its mind back and does want you, and you might have been hurt, your ego might feel hurt, and you might have slightly pulled back. So you can see how the running and the chasing happens. It's just a play between the two egos, you know, but basically the attachment wound is what you're feeling when two egos have come together and formed an attachment relationship, and then one pulls back for whatever reason. Like I said, there's tons of different reasons why this can fall apart. And then you're left with that horrendous attachment wound, okay? And it can even be your decision, because me and my husband mutually decided to separate. We decided together it was time. And, you know, it was hell for me. I knew it was going to be hell, and I was probably more scared than him, because I said that to him at the time, because we'd been together for 15 years. But yeah, the attachment wound that I was left with was horrendous. So I haven't got too much more time, because I've got to go and get my daughter from school. But it's just to explain that, you know, this is why these attachments are so difficult to break. Because the ego sort of has made this decision that it wants that person, and it's not going to just give it up overnight, you know, because the reason why is the perceived pain. It hurts so much to feel your attachment wounding come up, and the pain is unbearable. And I mean, like, I used to just wake up every day in pain, every morning. The minute I open my eyes, pain, you know. And then obviously going through my twin flame journey, my soulmate journey, you know, it's been the same thing. And it's basically where my ego's tried to, you know, it lost the attachment of the husband, and now it's tried to attach into other people, yeah, other attachments, which initially started off okay and then broke down, you know. And then my ego's just in this constant sort of pain of like the attachment wounds being exposed. So what I'm saying to you is, if you wake up in pain because an attachment's been removed, just know that it's actually your ego that's in pain. You're wrongly identified as the ego persona. And over time, what happens is the pain does burn off, because pain is really an illusion as well. I know that's hard to believe, but it is. So over time, the pain burns off, because it's just old pain body actually. When you've got the attachment wound being exposed, what you're actually feeling is all your pain body coming up. And your pain body was inside you the whole time, but it was laying dormant, and it was being covered up by the plaster, the sticking plaster, which was the attachment or the relationship. And without that attachment, without that relationship, you pull that plaster away, you've got all your pain body underneath. And that pain body's been there since your birth, since your previous lives, since all the traumas you've been through in this life. You've been carrying all this pain, but you didn't really feel it, because momentarily all of that pain body was covered up by your relationship. And if you're interested in that, read Eckhart Tolle, Power of Now, chapter 7, I think it is, Enlightened Relationships. It's either chapter 7 or chapter 8, but he goes into a lot of detail about this. Anyway, you're not alone if you're waking up in the morning and you're in pain because you've lost your attachment. That's the reason why the twin flame relationship is so hard to let go of, because it is so painful. Even if that person's not really there giving you love, it's so powerful, the illusion of love that you felt from them, and it's so hard to let go of that memory and that feeling, and that hope that they might return, you know. But you will get there. I'm going to do more videos on it. Over time, what happens is the pain just, like, you know, they say time is a healer. And it's because pain does subside over time, because pain just burns off. Eventually your pain reduces down, the pain body reduces down. And once your pain body reduces down, then you're ready to just finally be at peace and let go of the attachment. And be at peace and just say, actually, I'm not the ego. I don't need this attachment. And because there's not so much pain, you start to feel the love within you of God, spirit, source, you know, and you start to feel that, the love that you already are. You already naturally are love. You just can't feel it when you perceive yourself to be an ego identity. And you can't feel it when you've got a lot of pain body coming up. But you do come back to the love that you already are. It just takes time and patience. And you're not alone. I'm here, your soul sister. And if you ever want to book in with me to talk about it or have a reading on it, you know, you can have a reading on it, or you can just talk about it, whatever you want. You know, just reach out to me, contact me, all right? Because I'm here and I know what it's like, which is why I'm calling it a diary, because a lot of videos on YouTube you watch about this sort of thing, it's just factual, whereas what I'm doing is I am sharing as your soul sister, you know, that I understand. And I'm talking from experience because I'm coming out the other side of it. But the interesting thing is I'm not fully out of it. So it's quite interesting because as I realise certain things, I can share them with you, as you do with me. So anyway, lots of love. That's the attachment wound. It's so you understand why you feel so much freaking pain when your twin flame, soulmate, things go wrong. Why the hell is it so painful? What is this attachment wound? Okay, so it kind of, and it makes you realise why the hell you just was trying to hold on to it for so long and you just couldn't get over it. Because it's horrible. The attachment wound is horrible. And that's another reason why we really do want to eradicate this ego and come back to the true self that we are. Because the ego makes you, you know, people think the ego is fun and it's part of being human. It's actually the biggest source of suffering to be in that state. But anyway, again, that's another video. Sending you lots of love and peace. And thanks for subscribing. Thanks for liking the video. Because hopefully, you know, hopefully a lot of people might, well, even 1 or 2 people could actually benefit from watching it and just think, yeah, that makes sense why I'm feeling like this, you know. And it won't last forever. It doesn't last forever. Peace.